Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can begin, Bu Silva.
Okay. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to thank Allah that give us everything. So this afternoon we can be here to do our activity. May Allah always give His blessing from the beginning until the end of this guest lecture. I also thanks for department management, especially study program of management University of Erlangga, Faculty Economic and Business, together with IIUM for held this event. And for all the participants that still with us, yeah, until today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. My name is Silva Livusmita. As you probably know, I'm here as a moderator. I will lead this guest lecture from 2 p.m. or maybe 3 p.m. at Malaysian time. And today we have international guest lecturer with the topic is about the business outlook series, past, present, and future. And here we have the best speaker. First is Associate Prof. Dr. How to spell ya? Ridhwan Fontaine, yeah, from IIUM Gombak. And the second is Dr. Ganjar. Ganjar C-nya apa ya, dokter? Ganjar Chandra.
Chandra means bulan.
Iya, bulan. Lahir malam hari. Premananto. Okay. First, I will lead this event. For each speaker, we'll have 20 minutes for deliver the subject. After that, we'll follow by question and answer. So the audience, moving along to our session. First, I would like to give this guest lecture to our first speaker, Dr. Ridhwan Fontaine. Dr. Ridhwan, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen because I have made some PowerPoint slides. Okay, so I did not realize that I had only 20 minutes. So I'm going to go very, very quickly. Hopefully the logic will be very easy to understand. So the title that I was given is Spiritual Management, Learning from the Pandemic, and I am part of the International Islamic University, Malaysia. So I've been working on spiritual management since 2010, and I actually have a lot of data that I've collected, and I've developed a number of approaches that help students become more spiritual. And what I normally do is at the beginning of the semester, I will take a survey to measure their level of spirituality. And by the end of the semester, I will measure the level of spirituality again and see whether through attending my lectures, they have increased in their spirituality. And normally they do. And the model that I use is basically based on Surah Al-Fatiha. And I understand that in Indonesia, it's a very multicultural, multi-religious society. So I will explain it in a way that everybody can understand. And inshallah, I will go quite quickly. So Surah Al-Fatiha, everybody, or at least all the Muslims should know this surah very, very well. And really what this is telling us is that to develop spirituality, there's a three-step process. The first is you have to get to know God better. The second is you have to develop a personal mission that is bigger than yourself. And the third thing is you have to choose the right role model. And if the best role models are actually coming from the past. And I will explain these three steps very quickly, inshallah. So to get to know God better, it's really very important to realize that very often people do believe in God, but they often learn about their religion when they're at school, sometimes only primary school. And so they just have a little bit of knowledge and that's it. And there's no initiative on their side to get to know God better. And actually, that is the key. The more you know about God, obviously, the more spiritual you become. And so there are three ways to get to know about God. First of all, you can think about revelation. So if you're Muslims, of course, this means reading Quran. If you're a Christian, it's reading the Bible. If you're Buddhist or Hindu, it's referring to your own scripture. But that's obviously one way to get to know God better. The second thing is to think about the creation around you. For example, I love sports and I love fitness. And I'm amazed by the muscle, right? The muscle in our body. The complexity of a muscle is unbelievable. It is really very, very hard to understand how sophisticated and complex just a muscle is. And then if you think about it, you have in the body, you have the muscle, you have the skeleton, you have the respiratory system, you have the brain, you have the nervous system. It's just amazing, right? So it's about thinking about the world around you. And then this is where if you watch a documentary about science, for example, you can really appreciate what God has created in a much better way. The third thing is to think about history. And I'm not going to talk about this because or else it will take too long, but very simply, throughout history, there are some societies that have been ethical. And there are some societies that have been unethical. And essentially, unethical societies become corrupt and disintegrate. Right? So when you look at society, at history, you realize that there is this importance to understand that ethics is not just an abstract concept, is actually one of the key reasons why some societies are more successful than others. Now, I'm not sure if this is important in the Indonesian context, but in some countries, there's a lot of secular theories. And one of the theories is the theory of evolution. If you want, we can talk about this later. If not, I don't have to talk about it. But if anybody wants to have this discussion, I have a slide for this. So then, okay, so the first step, you get to know God better. This should make you realize that there's more to your life than just yourself. So you should develop a personal mission that is bigger than yourself. And that means serving other people. And what is interesting in Islam is that the focus is always you start with yourself and then people around you. And the reason why I emphasize this is because very often what people do is they start with politics. And they say, oh, we have to change the government. We have to do this. We have to, for example, change the American policy. No, don't think like that. Think about, first of all, educating yourself, then helping your family, then helping your neighbors, and then you extend in this. But your view of yourself is you are part of the society and you want to contribute to the society. And it could be something very simple. Now, I've done this with my students many times. And when I do this project with my students always want to do very big things. Like, let's get rid of poverty in Malaysia. Or let's make sure that, nobody's hungry in Malaysia. Say, guys, don't start with that. Start with your neighbor, right? If your neighbor is hungry, make sure your neighbor has got food, right? And so when you focus on things which are very simple to do, you actually do something that is practical. Okay, I give one very simple example. With my students, we did a very simple project to plant trees in our university. So they bought seeds, which I think was like 100 ringgit, which was not a lot of money, like 300,000 rupiahs. And then they got permission to plant the seed. And it was quite interesting that when they did that, a lot of people were getting very excited and a lot of people donated money. And so I told to my students, you see, a lot of people want to do good things, but they don't do anything. They wait for someone to start and then they will make a contribution. So your role is to start something. It could be very small, just start, other people will follow. Okay. But when you have that vision of yourself of wanting to serve other people, you are not worried about your personal problems. Yes, you have personal problems, but you realize that you can still do something to help other people. And that becomes your focus. Your focus is not your personal problems. Your focus is, what can I do to help people around me? And of course, that makes you happy in the process. Step 3, do not compare yourself to other people. Okay, this is the biggest problem of my students. Malaysian students are obsessed with social media, and almost everything that they see on social media is fake. It is not the real world. It's a photoshopped version of the real world. And it puts them under so much stress. I'll give you one very simple example. I try to educate my students about the need for a healthy lifestyle. And so I talk about they have to sleep well, they have to eat well, and they have to have basic exercises. Very simple idea. But then I started a discussion with my students, and I realized that the majority of them are obsessed with losing weight. Now, I know my students, they are not fat. They're normal people. So I start thinking, how come are they so obsessed with losing weight? And of course, the only conclusion is they look and they compare themselves with people on social media. And now they're becoming frustrated, sad, depressed, because they're comparing themselves with social media all the time. And they forget this is not reality. This is not reality. So we keep.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Prof. Your slide is not moving, or maybe.
No, because I'm.
Not included in the material yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the point that I'm making is that they're so under so much pressure because of social media. And this is what I call the problem of influencers today. Now, human beings need role models. And so I have no issue that you have a role model, but you should have a role model which you know is a good person. And I would argue that a lot of the influencers today, they may be good people, they may be bad people, but we don't really know what they're really like. What we are encouraged to do is to really think about the good people in the past, people we know that this is what a good person was like. So of course, as Muslims, we're encouraged to take prophets, okay? In another religion, I'm not sure what are their role models, but I'm sure that they have their role models. The point is, when you take these people as role models, then becoming spiritual is very easy because you know what to do, okay? If you don't take these good people as role models, then you are back to the problem that a lot of people have is they're under a lot of stress because they're trying to follow these influencers, and actually these influencers are trying to make money from them. They're not trying to make money from them. They are making money from them. That's a better way of putting it. So when you understand this process, becoming a better person is very easy. And why would you not want to become a better person? This is the thing that I always think about. At the moment, a lot of my students that I had this discussion with, the first thing that they want to do, they want to have a good career. They want to have a good job. They want to have a good income. I have no problem with that. That's fine. That's not my question to them. My question to them is, if you have a good career and you are a bad person, what have you really achieved? Nothing. You're a bad person. If you have a good career, but you are helping your family, you're helping your neighbors, you still have the good career. You have the money, you have the nice car, no problem. But the point is, you're not just worried about yourself. You want to make a contribution. And that's really what spiritual management is about. It is thinking about other people, not sacrificing yourself. So you don't give away all your money and then you become very poor, but you create a system where as you become successful, you give back to people around you. And so you're helping people as you improve in your situation, your career, your education, and so on and so forth. So this brings us to the pandemic. And the question is the pandemic the problem or is it the context? Okay, I think the issue with the pandemic is it is a distraction. It's the context. It's not the real problem. The real problem is, do you want to become a better person? Or are you just thinking about yourself? And you're not really worried about other people. And this is a challenge that I think a lot of people are facing. For example, in Malaysia, we used to, or in Malaysians used to have a very strong culture of helping one another because the kampung culture was there. The village culture was very strong. And then when a lot of young people moved to the cities, that culture of helping one another basically disappeared, or it was substantially reduced. So this is one of the challenges of modern life. Can we recreate that culture of helping one another in a city environment where normally people are more individual, more selfish, and more focused on their career rather than on their community? I think that when you understand spiritual management, you have the tools to respond to the pandemic in the best way, and not just the pandemic, any issue. But you're always thinking about these three-step process. Now, in this three-step process, the one of the issues which is really very, very important is not to become, not to focus on what you cannot do, but to focus on what you can do. So very often when we read a lot of social media, the social media or the news is talking about problems at the national level, things that you have no control of, but then you start getting very worried about it. One of the tricks with spiritual management is to ignore these things and to simply ask yourself the question, what can I do to become a better person? And if you understand this three steps process, becoming a better person is quite easy. Now, some of you may be asking the question, how do I know? Okay, one way of knowing is simply my research with my students. The other way of knowing is I started a few months ago a YouTube channel. It's called Fontaine. And one of the things that I realized is that my students, most of them do not know how to reflect on the Quran. You can find out information about what this ayat mean, what a surah means, what does this mean, what does that mean, but actually taking that information and then turning it to a personal reflection is something that they find very hard. So I'm making 4 minutes videos, very easy language for them to understand. I also have a Malay translation. And so far I only have 3 videos. So I'm making 1 video every month. So on the next week, 25th of November, I'm going to shoot another episode. And every month I am shooting an episode. So my observation is when you start doing things like that, you create something. And that feeling of creating something, even if it's as simple as putting a video on YouTube, that gives you the feeling of contributing. And when you are creating, you have a certain mindset and you don't complain. When I listen to people talk, a lot of them is complaining, 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 complaining. When you're always complaining about things, you cannot create things. You don't see how you can serve other people. Okay, so part of what I shared with you is based on the research that I have done. And then part of it is just my own personal experience during this pandemic. This is a very small effort, I know, but one of the reasons I wanted to share with this is because I think all of your students can also become creators of knowledge. They can share their experiences on YouTube, and maybe they think that their experience is very not important, but they may actually put their ideas in a certain way that it motivates other people to become more positive in the way they solve their problems as well. Right? So it's also a question of you don't underestimate, even if you have just a very small contribution that you can make, for example, like posting a video on YouTube, do it. It's better that you make this one very small contribution than you make no contribution at all. Okay? So again, I try to keep to my 20 minutes. I don't know if I am close to my 20 minutes or not. But thank you.
Doctor, you have around Dr. Ganjar give 15 minutes more his time for you to explain more about the spiritual management learning from the pandemic. Maybe you may go through on your slide.
Okay, so I've actually finished my slides. What I would like to know is from the moderator, which part of the process, the first, the second, or the third process, would you like more explanation about?
Maybe the first one.
Okay, let's go to the first slide. So one of the problems when I was doing this is I don't know Indonesian students very well. So I don't know what level, how easy, how difficult it is to make this. So what I do with my students is a lot of them, of course, know how to read Quran in Arabic, but they do not actually know what it means. And so one thing to do is obviously to get them to read the meaning of of their revelation. But they also find that very strange because they haven't been taught to do that. And so now, because of YouTube, amongst others, a lot of this information about tafsir and so on and so forth is available on the YouTube, on the internet. So I actually have session with my students where we take a surah or a portion of the Quran and we watch a video in class together. So maybe I have 20 students in my class. I create 4 groups with 5 students. We watch the video for 20 minutes together, and then we have a 40 minutes discussion. When they do this for the first time, they're very unsure because they've never did this when they were at school. When they were at school and they were learning about religion, they were just simply asked to memorize information. They were never asked to share their opinions about, what do you find more inspiring? Which ayat do you like the most? How does this relate to your personal life? So they find that this at the beginning, they find this a little bit strange. But when in one of my classes, we do this for 14 weeks. So the first 2 or 3 weeks, they're not really sure because they're doing something that they've never done before. So they feel a little bit uncomfortable. And then after the 4th, 5th week, they're already used to this idea of thinking about revelation, talking about revelation, sharing their ideas. I also ask them to do a mind map so that they start understanding, okay, this surah means this, what are the different themes? And they start to visualize what a particular portion of the Quran is talking about. And again, I'm talking about Quran. It could be any scripture, depending on which religion you're coming from. So thinking about revelation for a lot of my students is very critical because it is a skill that they have not learned when they were at school. And so actually part of my job in class is to teach them that skill. What conclusions they make is not my problem. And so, for example, for some students, they will like a certain portion of the revelation for a different reason. Right? So, for example, I had one female student who was very interested about anything related to wearing the hijab, because that was an issue that she was thinking about and struggling with. For maybe some of the male students, they were more interested in knowing more about the meaning of certain dua, or there's certain episodes in the life of one of the prophets. So different people are interested in different things. No problem. The whole purpose of the exercise is to get them to think about revelation, and this becomes a habit for them. So what they think, that's fine. For a lot of my students, this is a key point in their spiritual development. Once they're encouraged to not simply memorize the information, but think about it and then start discussing it with their friends. So for example, one of the exercises that I've done with my students is there are a number of videos on Surah Yasin in English. So I get them to discuss the surah together in groups. And then what they find is not simply they get to know the surah, but they themselves as students, they get to know one another very closely. Because normally when they are busy studying, they don't really have time to talk about important things, right? In Malaysian culture, normally the questions will be, sudah makan, sudah tidur, sudah mandi. So very simple questions. Of course, it's more than that, but it's very simple questions. They normally will not talk about more spiritual questions. And now all of a sudden in class, they're talking about spiritual questions. They start to understand the spiritual perspective of their close friends, maybe students that they've known for 3 or 4 years, but they've never really talked about meaningful things. So for them, that's a very, very kind of personal skill that they use in order to become a better person. So one of the things that I always explain to my students is when I teach them, so one of the courses that I teach is actually called Management from an Islamic Perspective. What I teach them is not so that at the end of the class or the end of the semester, they become the perfect Muslim. It's more by the end of the semester, you have some basic tools. You have a model, you have some basic tools, and then you will start working. You will leave the university, you will start working, and then you will apply these tools for the rest of your life. So for example, as a lecturer in management, I want all of my students to become CEOs. Why? Because I believe that when you are the CEO of a company, you have the power and authority to make things better inside that company. So maybe there's some rules and regulations inside that company that are not fair. Maybe there's some kind of discrimination based on gender, based on ethnicity, based on sometimes education. So if you have that power as the CEO, you can say, no, these policies is actually, it's unfair. We'll get rid of them. We have policies which are better. Okay. So thinking about revelation is a very important thing. Thinking about the world around you, that's also a very simple process. One of the things that I always encourage my students to do is think about people who have got less than you. Right? So this is again a social comparison. A lot of people look at people who have got more and they become jealous because people have got more. So, okay, before you look at people who have got more, look at people who have got less. So for example, I remember that there's one project that I did where I took my students, and there's an area in Kuala Lumpur where there's a lot of people who are homeless. And some people think that people are homeless because they're lazy. Actually, the problem that has happened in Kuala Lumpur is that a lot of low-income people were barely surviving. But over the last few years, the cost of living in Kuala Lumpur has increased. But the salaries of these low-income workers have not increased. So they're actually working. And many times they're working very hard. But the income that they get is not enough to, for example, rent a house or rent a room or this or that. And so I wanted my students to see that maybe you feel sorry for yourself. You think that you have a lot of problems. But why, when you go around and you meet other people, you realize that these people have got much bigger problems than you. Now, the idea is not to look down on these people, but to say, how can I help these people? What can I do to help these people? How can I, you know, like when you start looking at the world around you, you stop worrying about yourself more. And it's more, you have this desire as a human being to want to help other people because you realize you can. Okay, so that's, I think, the most important points that I wanted to make about step 1. So shall we go to step 2 again?
I think the time is up already, Doctor.
Okay,
I'm
no
sorry.
problem, no problem.
So thank you very much for Dr. Ridhwan. Maybe I will proceed into a second speaker, Dr. Ganjar.
I will stop sharing.
Okay, thank you
Thank you,
very much.
Ridhwan. I'm still waiting for Ridhwan continuing his speech because it's very interesting, Bu Silva. Maybe we can continue after I finish my presentation, I guess.
You have 20 minutes, Doctor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have the same theme that we will talk about dealing with pandemic when spirituality have to deal with pandemic. So what we have to do, we will talk along the journey around the spirituality that we trying to find from many sources, from journal, from Al-Quran. How can we deal with pandemic? So I think must be fruitful also, Prof. Ridhwan, if we make a collaboration to write our opinion. We can invite the audience in here from Economy Sharia, from IIUM, so we can make a call for book chapter, something like that, to share the opinion about how to manage, how to deal with pandemic. I think it will be fruitful collaboration that we can conduct. We can write our opinion and we can make collaboration to make a book. Maybe we can conduct that in the near time. Bu Silva mungkin bisa mengkoordinasi ya, can coordinate in management department and Syariah economic department and IIUM. Okay, before we move to other discussion, we have to understand about the definition that spirituality is something that we understand. Prof. Ridhwan already mentioned about we understand about there is the ultimate power beyond our power, beyond ourselves. There is existing vital forces. So there's already many academicians that trying to understand about what is spirituality. Other studies have defined spirituality as the feeling of being connected to something beyond ourselves. So I think it's very, very related one to others academician. When we discuss about religiosity, some of them make expression that spirituality is different with religiosity, because religiosity discuss more specific about how man do his spirituality thing. So it includes some specific ritual, something that they have to do, how to do some beneficial things, some contribution, and some religion things. So then Hitchin and Worf claim that religion is seen as path to spirituality. So if this is the one kind of doing spirituality, that it must be specific things, when spirituality is more general and religiosity is much more about to doing specific things, because we have so many religion. So how we deal with something that exists our power when we deal with God. So we have different path. So there is separation between spirituality and religiosity in one on many articles. But when some of academicians still saying that this is the same. So it can be exchangeable because it's about discussion connection between God and about our activity. So we can watch it on the journal by Iransi and Semersiov, the relation between spiritual leadership and issues spirituality and religiosity. So people can make differentiation between spirituality and religiosity, but others can say that this is the same thing. So it's up to us, will we make it the same or not in our definition when we conducting in journal or academic things. So that's the basic about spirituality and religion, and we're trying to move it into our area that we are dealing in business and economic. So how about conducting spirituality and religiosity in workplace? So based on the article by Benefio, Fry, and Gay in Psychology of Religion and Spirituality. So there is acronym SRY, Spirituality and Religion in Workplace. It's very interesting that when we talk about the history, the evolution of SRW, so there's already many research about that. It stated that interest in spirituality and religion in workplace has emerged over the last few decades. We can say it is during 19th century, it's already come out. And they have many positive impact. They have found that there is positive impact of SRW on organizational reality, on the process, on the leadership practice. So it must be fruitful if we put spirituality and religiosity as our variable in our research. So SRW, by definition, by Ridhwan and Fontaine, have many definitions. That one definition is about the inner life. So spirit is about our soul. So it recognition that employee have soul, that they must be happy in the workplace. The other definition is about the desire to find work meanings. So in Indonesia, maybe we know about Ustadz siapa ya? Ari Ginanjar. Silva must know about him. Bapak Ari Ginanjar sometimes told us about when we trying to make our life, our work become meaningful, so we have to understand the contribution of the work into the human life. Even that, just like Prof. Ridhwan said, the small contribution that we have can make meaningful to others. So that's make our work become meaningful. So we will work in a spiritual way, we will work in happy way, because we know that our work is so meaningful. So we have to understand about the meaning of our work to the society. The other definition is about commitment by the company to give, to serve the community for spiritual growth. So there is many definition about spiritual and religiosity and workplace. I'm trying to add something else, that because Al-Quran is huda, petunjuk, is guidance for us. So I'm trying to make Sholat Jamaah based management. So we trying to understand how Quran Hadith give us the signal how to manage the organization. So this book is about trying to give learning, trying to learning from Sholat Jamaah, that Sholat Jamaah is part of doing things together, and there is leader and follower. So we can learn so much thing about Sholat Jamaah to manage the organization. So this is, I think, basic guidance for us to manage organization. So people can try to have insight how to conducting a good management, good corporate government, and good institution government. The effect of SRY is very meaningful, that it can increase the productivity. Reader 1982 already mentioned about that, and Dutchman and Plowman give the a better understanding about many evidence has suggested that spirituality give us a better performance for organization. And the other thing, how to deal with crisis, already trying to understand and to give insight, learning from server, and trying to make the pandemic that we deal with is something that not threatening but challenging. So we have to set our mindset that the pandemic that sent from God to us is not to threat us, is not to threatening us, but it's challenging thing by God that we have to deal with in a good way. So I have acronym that even that something that we deal is something that fearful, unpredictable, novel, and shocking, but based on Al-Quran, everything that we deal it in dunya, in this world, is to have happiness, dunya dan akhirat. So we have to find the happiness around something that happened even in crisis. And this is something that we're trying to help the business how to deal with crisis, especially pandemic, that there is so much learning that we will get from Hadith and Al-Quran, and we're trying to compiling into management crisis berbasis spirituality. Some point that I give punctuation in that book is about we have to have positive mindset. It's about our perception. God said in hadis riwayat Bukhari, aku adalah seperti persangkaan hambaku. I'm just like the perception of a human perception. So positive mindset should we have, because if we have negative, so the negative thing will be happen. Aku adalah seperti persangkaan hambaku. Itu adalah hadis qudsi yang diriwayatkan oleh Nabi Muhammad SAW. The other learning that I have is from Surat Al-Baqarah 45, verse 45, is about sabar and sholat. When we deal with something happen, problem, if we deal with problem, so something that we have to do is sabar and sholat. But sholat is not enough. Prayer is not enough. I'm trying to find in the experience of Moses alaihi salam, Nabi Musa alaihi salam, when he talked to his society, the society asked him to pray. So Nabi Musa didn't want to do that. Why? So in the Al-Baqarah verse 61, there is a discussion by Moses, Nabi Musa alaihi salam, and his colony. So prayer is not enough. So there should be effort to do something, to change something. The other thing that I learned about how to deal with crisis is learning from Sulaiman alaihi salam, when he founding he found a colony of ants. So Nabi Sulaiman learning from the leader of ants about how to be tranquilizing leader. So we will learn about how to be a good leader in the crisis era. So there should be announcement, and there should be a rapid action, and there should be a tranquilizing thing. So the leader have to try to make his society calm down, but they should have awareness. The society should have crisis awareness also, that based on the announcement that given by the leader of ants. And something that really meaningful is about how Yusuf alaihi salam have to conduct crisis also. This is economic crisis that they have to deal with. That Nabi Yusuf in many verses, ayat 47, 48, 55, especially in 55, he talking about knowledge. So how to maintain the inventory, there should be a good knowledge. I think this is the expert is with us. Prof. Ridhwan is from multimedia, from big data analysis. I think he will give us how IT is very meaningful to deal with crisis. So I think this is something that I've got to Silva. In the end, I will say that we used to pray to God during crisis. And this crisis, this pandemic crisis, make us to make more spirituality activity, that we trying to be near to God to help, have some help. But we have to understand after the pandemic over, so we forget that we already trying to get near to God, so we will far away from God. So this ayat remind us about we have to stay close. We have to conducting a spiritual thing during pandemic. But even if something that already passed, the pandemic is already pass away, so so we still have to get near to God. Hopefully that we are among those who are enabled to always carry out spiritual management. So this seminar with Prof. Ridhwan Fontaine trying to remind all of us, especially me, to always near to God. But prayer is not enough. We have to do something. We have to do some innovative thing. We have to create, just like Prof. Ridhwan said, create something. Seperti kata apa ya, IIUM. Saya jadi teringat. I remember from when Prof. Ridhwan said, I remember about the quotation from IIUM. Mulai dari diri sendiri, mulai dari yang kecil, mulai dari sekarang. Start from ourselves, start from the small contribution, and start from now. Thank you, Bu Silva. Thank you, Bu Prof. Ridhwan. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kanchar, for your material. I think both of speaker give an excellent topic, give an excellent meaningful material that can be absorbed by us. Okay, I will open a session for question and answer. The audience can write the question to the chat room, or maybe raise your hand to talk directly. Now I'm looking for chat in here. There is any one question for Dr. Ridhwan Fontaine from Didik Wawan. The question is about how the spiritual things in the big data, since Dr. Ridhwan have a background in the multimedia, especially in big data. And then is it Islam talk about is it Islam also talk about the IT or not? Something like that. Okay, Dr. Ridhwan.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. So just to clarify, I have nothing to do with multimedia. I'm on the management side, but big data is a concept that goes across discipline. So it's not just IT, it's management, it's engineering, it's medicine. Everybody is just using big data as a tool. So a very simple answer to that question is yes. Big data allows people to make better decisions. Okay, more ethical decisions. So for example, let's say today I am managing a company and I don't have any data. Basically, I'm just, as maybe the CEO of the company, I'm just using my opinion. And my opinion is probably wrong. Whereas if I have a big data system that I put in place, the big data will be telling me exactly facts about how to manage my company better. So you eliminate the bias, the human bias in decision making. Okay, and this is actually called DDDM, data-driven decision making. The idea that every leader should be looking at data before they make a decision, or else it's just your opinion. Okay, so from that perspective, I would say that Islam encourages us to focus on al-haq. And al-haq is a word that has got many dimensions to it. One of the meanings of the word is that it's something that is important. It is also something that is factually true. Okay, so definitely I would say that big data is, it helps us as Muslims to make better decisions because we have facts. So for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have two options, option A, option B. If I'm a leader and I just simply think that option A is the best solution, then that's my opinion. I may be right, I may be wrong. If I'm a leader and I have a big data system and the big data actually tells me option B is the better option, now I still prefer option A. So my ego is, oh, we should do A because that's what I believe. So are you going to follow your desires, your opinions, or are you going to follow the facts? So if you follow the facts, you know that's better for the organization, it's better for the employees, it's better for the customers, etc., etc., etc. One of the things that we have to remember about the word spirituality, and I'm glad that Prof spent so much time defining the concept, it means different things to different people. Some people think about spirituality as something very abstract, like, you know, in a Malaysian context, someone, you know, dia buat zikir banyak-banyak. Okay, that's one level of thinking about spirituality. But another level of thinking about spirituality has to do with honesty. You have an amana, you have a responsibility. And you may be the CEO of a company and you may have the power, but still you have the responsibility to get the data first before you make decisions, because you know that the decisions will affect the lives of other people. Right? So a very good example, if now we're talking about the pandemic, developing a vaccine. Let's say I'm a company, I develop a vaccine, but I did not do my testing of the vaccine in a very professional way. But I know if I sell it I bring it to the market, I will make a lot of money. Actually, because you did not do the development of the vaccine in a comprehensive way, you don't know whether or not that vaccine will benefit the people or harm the people. So it is your responsibility. Do things properly. Get the data. And so big data allows you to get the data so that you know what is the right thing, the wrong thing to do. It's actually very simple. Okay. It's always about, as Muslims, we should always be thinking in terms of, does my decision benefit the society or does it harm the society? Sometimes we have situations where I will make a lot of money, but other people will suffer. Then that's not the ethical thing to do. You want to create a scenario where I want to make a lot of money because we're still in business, but we also want the rest of the society to benefit. So that's the kind of thinking that we're trying to develop when we're talking about spiritual management, inshallah.
Inshallah, maybe Dr. Kanchar will have some answer.
Okay, thank you, Silva. So when I heard about some the explanation of Prof. Ridhwan, so I remember about the concept of tabayun. Is that right, Prof. Ridhwan? So we have to make check and recheck. We in academic we will know about the concept of triangulation.
Yes.
So before we move to decide something, so we have to conduct triangulation. We have to conduct check and recheck. And in Islam, we have the concept of tabayun. So we have to investigate the data. Is it correct data or not? Something like that. Is that right, Prof. Ridhwan? Okay.
Can I just say something? Because
yes,
I think
yes.
you made a point earlier, which is very important. When there's a crisis, you have to move quickly. Move quickly doesn't mean you panic.
Yes, right.
So the idea, if you have a big data system, you can get data very quickly. So very quickly, you make the right decision. Okay. That is the value of big data.
That's the value of digital era. So we have to go to digital business also, right, Prof. Ridhwan? Okay, great. And I remember about some ayah, one ayah, Bu Silva. We know about Surat Ar-Rahman, verse 33. I will read the translate. Hai jamaah, wahai jin dan manusia, jika kamu sanggup menembus langit dan bumi, maka lintasilah. You will not get through it unless you have power. Kecuali dengan kekuatan, kecuali dengan sultan. There is many tafsir about the sultan, kekuatan. It can be kekuatan by God. It can be that God will be give permission to us to menembus langit dan bumi. Tapi it can have meaning that we can we can go to the moon and go to the deepest earth if we use power, if we use IT technology. So I think Islam already discussed about that that we have to mastering the IT, the technology. So when we talk about Zoom, something like this, or Microsoft Teams, if we are the one the creator of Zoom or Microsoft Teams or other, so we will think about amal jariyah. So when we talk about amal jariyah, Islam have give us punctuation that we have to think about activities that if we did, it can be our amal jariyah. And it also about digital business. after we that, digital business is still running. If we are the one who create the Zoom, so everybody, especially in education like this, in seminar like this, so we will have the pahala also, gitu kan? We will have the reward also from that. Nah, ini yang we have to think about that also. Bagaimana kita bisa masuk ke dunia digital sehingga ini bisa menjadi amal jariah kita.
Can I add something, Prof?
Of course, Prof.
I think what you say is very, very fantastic because it's what I try to teach my students as well. Sometimes as Muslims, we have a very limited concept of amal jariyah. So we think about a school, orphanage, very basic things. But actually, anything that makes a contribution to the society is a amal jariyah. So for example, there's a lot of companies that provide clean water, easy access to electricity in rural areas, banja, but without any chemicals. I forgot what the name of banja is in English. Fertilizer. Fertilizer with no chemicals. So this is actually, if your niyat is you want to spread the goodness in the society, that is also becomes your amal jariyah. And that's a very important aspect of spiritual management. So I'm very happy that you raised that issue. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much, Prof. Maybe that's so it very, very fruitful discussion, Bu Silva. So we can make collaboration inside between Prof. Ridhwan and me. Hopefully that it can be give insightful for the audience.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ganjar and Dr. Ridhwan for the answer. Is there any questions from the audience? You may write on the chat room or just raise your hand.
If the question is Bahasa Indonesia, that's also fine.
Yeah, you can deliver in Bahasa Indonesia or English, yeah. Can be both.
And I think some of our audience is not Muslim, so it must be fruitful if we discuss with other religion.
Oh, this is I think this is a very important point as well. Actually, one of the key concepts I think in Islam is we are very happy to cooperate with anyone on anything that is beneficial.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's no problem. Can I just share a very simple story, but I think very inspiring story?
Of course.
Before that, we have one of our audience.
Yeah.
He want to share about the other perspective from Mr. Igusti Ngurah Widya.
Oh, he is our alumni that he live in Bali right now.
Okay.
In Bali, he live with Hindu, Buddha. Is that right?
Most of them is not Muslim, but Hindus. Yeah,
Okay.
Hindus religions.
Okay, please, Ajung.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Ganjar, and hello, good afternoon, Prof. Ridhwan. Before I start to share, maybe I would like to introduce myself. My name is Igusti Ngurah Widya Hadi, but you can call me Ajung. I'm one of the alumni of Universitas Airlangga, but right now I'm pursuing my doctoral degree or PhD degree also in Doctor of Management in Airlangga University. But first of all, it's very interesting when we talk about spirituality in management, especially when you talk about how we live in this pandemic era, and what that you already shared about your project with your student was also conducted by us here in Bali in my university, because I'm also a lecturer here in Universitas Pendidikan Nasional in Denpasar. In pandemic situation like nowadays, we cannot doing some as we know in our university in Indonesia, like KKN, Pak Gancar, kuliah kerja nyata, which is we usually back to our community to conduct some project. But because this pandemic situation, the student cannot conducting that project by its group, but they are doing individually. So it's very interesting when we conducting project in this pandemic era, which is we need to make a contribution to our community, like Prof. Ridhwan said earlier. And then another perspective, maybe when we talk about spirituality, as Prof. Gancar said, with so many hadiths before, and also like tabayun and so on, we believe in Hindus also when we doing or making some policy in management, especially in our perspective, in our religion, we have Trihita Karana perspective. What is Trihita Karana? Maybe I would like to share about Trihita Karana. Trihita Karana is one of our belief that we are connected not only with human, with any other person or human, but also with our God and also with our community or with nature. There is three perspective: Parahyangan, Palemahan, and Pawongan. Pawongan is our relation within people. Parahyangan is our connection with our God, yeah, and also Palemahan with the nature itself.
Okay.
So when we talk about pandemic situation right now, we also need to consider about this belief because in this pandemic situation, people are going stressful. People are they are very I think sangat apa ya, bisa dibilang bingung gitu ya.
Yeah.
What kind of thing that they need to do gitu. So we are going back to nature. We are going back to our prayer. We are going to connect it with our people. And in Balinese, there are so many movement in this pandemic situation. Like in our campus, in our university, we are conducting research with collaboration with another village, with another community, to doing some urban farming. So we are back to nature. We are not too strict with tourism sector, but we are back to our root, back to our nature, back to become an urban farmer, so we can live more and make some profitability more from another economic area like farming and urban farming and so on. Jadi sebenarnya ini sebuah hal yang menarik ketika kita membahas spiritualitas ya Pak Gancar, because we need also consider about ourselves, not only about ourselves but also our connection with God, with nature, with other people. Jadi kalau tadi dikatakan when Prof. Ridhwan said that he was conducting some project with his student, giving back to the community, it's also very great to us to conduct maybe for the next gitu ya. Kemudian when we talk about in management, we also believe that in our religion, in our belief, we have a special gift from the God itself. In Hindus perspective, Hindus belief, we have three pramana. Three pramana is sabda, bayu, and also idap. Sabda means like we can make some voices, we can give our voices to make some policy. And then bayu means like power, tenaga, physically we can doing something with our strength gitu ya. And then idap, which is idap is mind ya, pikiran gitu ya. So before we are making some policy, also we need to think gitu ya, to think not only good for ourselves, not only good for the community, not only for good for the organization, but also for everything. So basically, when we talk about spirituality in Hinduism, is very wide. It's very sangat luas sekali ketika konsepsinya kita bahas. Tapi what thing that I already shared, just a little or a tiny bit of perspective from Hinduism like Tripramana, like Trikaya Parisuddha, and then ada yang namanya Trihita Karana. So many things that we can share more in the next time. Yeah. So that's all. That's
Yes.
all. Prof.
It's
Gancar, also Prof. Ridhwan.
really fruitful if we discuss among religion,
Yeah.
especially to make book together.
Yeah.
Prof.
Thank you.
Ridhwan, is there any comment from?
Okay.
So no.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the moderator.
Yes, sorry.
So, Dr. Ridhwan, do you want to give another opinions about what
Aju.
Igusti, yeah, what Igusti Ngurah Widya Hadi
I-
Saputra say?
I think I want to share a story because this is something that I experienced very early on when I came to Malaysia. So of course, Malaysia, like Indonesia, is a multicultural, multi-religious society, and everybody is trying to figure out what's the best way to create this harmony and also make things happen. And so there was an initiative in one of the Kuala Lumpur area, and there were Muslims, there were Buddhists, and there was Hindus, and they sat together and they realized that they had a common problem, which is drug addiction. So they just combined all of their resources to identify and to solve that very specific problem. And what they found is, as they were working together to solve this problem of drug addiction, that they were getting to know one another better. They were getting used to work with one another better, that they were appreciating one another's better. So it's almost like when it comes to multicultural exchanges, you don't have to talk a lot, but have a project that everybody can work together, and then human beings will just figure out what's the best way to interact with one another. So I really believe that spiritual management has to be based on very practical projects so that people can see, first of all, the outcome, and also people can just socialize together and get used to working together. So that's what I wanted to share.
Okay, Dr. Gancar, do you want to add another comment?
Yes.
I think this is the last part, right?
Yes. I will going to the last statement by Achung that he mentioned about oh no, I don't know if this is the first or the last thing about Trihita Karana. How you pronounce that, Achung?
Yeah, Trihita Karana.
Karana. Okay, right. So usually I mention also Trihita Karana as our local wisdom that we have. When I explain about CSR. So in CSR we know about something that usually state John Elkington. We have three pillars: people, planet, and profit. So we have much better three pillars that in Islam we call hablum minallah. We make harmony with God. We make harmony with people. That in Islam we call it hablum minanas. And then we have to make something good harmony with our environment. So we call it rahmatan lil alamin. We have to give rahmat, love to our environment. So we have so many local wisdom that better than John Elkington said about CSR. So I think it's really meaningful that you remind us about that, Achung. Thank you. And about the spirituality during pandemic, so I have article about the warning from World Health Organization, WHO. It's about maybe the pandemic will increasing risk factor for suicide. So we have to thank God, but because we have spirituality, we still have hope. We still have something beyond us that we can rely on. So that make us not depend to ourselves. If we depend to ourselves, so we'll be hopeless. So spirituality give us hope. So we still pray to the one. We still have an expectation that it must be have a goodness. So alhamdulillah, we can go on. So spirituality can have meaningful impact to daya tahan. Daya tahan bahasa Inggrisnya apa ya, Bu Silva? We have immunization, something like that.
Okay.
When we dealing with pandemic, so much more suicide story. It's not on the country that have spirituality factor. So believe in the spiritual community, like Malaysia also, that when people have spirituality, so they have more spirit to deal with crisis. So we just have to remind to our kalau di agama Islam ada ulama. So the ulama will give the spirit. Kalau di agama ada biksu, ada pendeta gitu ya, Ajung. So they give the statement to give spirit to their community. So it must be more have a power, but then we just have to hanya if we just believe to ourselves, depend to ourselves. So alhamdulillah, we still have God that we can rely on. Okay, that's it, Bu Silva. Maybe my comment according to the statement by IIUM.
Okay, thank you very much for both speaker, Dr. Ridhwan Fontaine and Dr. Ganjar for your material today. I'm very appreciated that this guest lecture gave a very valuable, yeah, for us, especially in the as a human being in the organizations. I will write some conclusions. I will read some conclusion that I note in here from Dr. Ridhwan. A lot of things that I summarize, that I will summarize in the maybe on a 1 or 2 sentence about a human being. Yeah, must have a good. We must have a good person and care to our society, and this is start from ourselves. So no need to wait another person to start a good things. And every good things that we do will give impact to our environment, whether in the organization, whether in the society. And as a young generation, we must have religions or tools or basic rules in our life to reduce the negative impact of the social media in the modern era. So we will still a good person in line with our spiritual. And for Dr. Ganjal, I conclude about the religiosity and spirituality have a positive impact in the organization, especially in increasing productivity and provide a good performance. Also in here there is some quotes. Yeah, the smart people is not enough to develop the management. Also spiritual itself is not enough to develop the good business. So we need to make it together to give a best practice in the management. Also in the how about in the multi culture or in the multi religions that we know, we live in Indonesia and Malaysia, that all of the country also have a multi spiritual, multi religion. So in here, in some of organization, we can focus on the best way to solve the problems, following the best practice, the data and effect. But we cannot leave behind the spirituality. Yeah, the spirituality will guide us to be honest person, and honest person could be lead the organization to more productive and give a good performance. I think that's all that I can conclude. Thank you very much for all the audience that attend the guest lecture today. So again, I will give or close this event. I will give to Dr. Ganjar as a head of department management. Thank you very much.
Thank
Assalamualaikum
you.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Ridhwan. Hopefully that it's just the beginning of our collaboration. So maybe we can continuing to writing our opinion into something that can be read by others. Ajung, maybe you can you can make contribution also based on your perspective, based on your religion, because it can be fruitful if we discuss among many religion also. So this is the spirituality as a basic to defend against a crisis on pandemics era. Okay, thank you. We will discuss it on WhatsApp group, Prof. Ridhwan.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation, and hopefully everybody will have a good Saturday afternoon.
Yes, inshallah. Barakallah. See you in the next project.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I will end it.